So hey, hi everybody. Gerard Bullock, sports chair elect, your chamber of commerce here, and just wanted to welcome everybody to this month of August. Kids going back to school, back to the swing of things, and I just want to say, welcome to everybody here, and so glad you're able to make it today. But first, before we get started, Kathy Hall, to please bless us.
Good morning. Bow with me, please. Lord, thank you for this day, for the beauty of it, for the opportunity to be able to gather in freedom. Father, thank you for this food. We ask you to make it nourishment to our bodies to your service as we serve this food. Give us full value, Father, in Christ's name.
Amen. Thank you, Kathy. Next, Tyler, see you around here. Please lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Let's stand. Salute our flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So next, this chamber is an investment in everybody here. It makes a great investment in the chamber. We really appreciate it. So we do have some brand new investors here that are here today. Please stand so we can recognize you for your first lunch. If you're a new investor, please stand. All right, thanks. So, finish up here. Please introduce yourself. A lot of us know each other, but a lot of us don't know a lot of the new investors. So please make sure you stop by, introduce yourself, say hello, and make them feel welcome here in our chamber. Our large investors that you see on the back of our program, we really want to thank them for their continued support of our chamber. And, we couldn't be here without them. Well, next, another group of people that make a large investment into our chamber with their time and their energy are ambassadors. So please, all of our ambassadors, please stand. And for a complete list of our ambassadors, please check our website out. But look, our ambassadors, if you think about it, go from ribbon cutting to just stopping on businesses to say hello, and just to make sure that, they're pretty much the face of our chamber. And it's their time and energy that they spend day after day. And then also, like I said before, their employers that they work for as well, if they do work for an employer, and thank you to them for letting them get out and do the things they do and be the face of the chamber for the community. So we really want to appreciate them too and say thanks. And today, I want to thank a great friend of mine and our lunch sponsor, Mr. Allen. Thank you so much. So she's done well with basically sponsoring our food here, and she gets some really great hoodies as well. And I think one I was able to get into the cool club and money out on once, which is great. So but if you haven't got your hoodie yet, grab it. But I just want to say thanks so much. Straight supply lunch, we'll get a hoodie too, right? So no, thank you so much. But again, thanks for coming this month. And with the board, for the message that we have here from the board, I'd like to please introduce, without further ado, our chairman of the board.
Jenna Allen first. She didn't want to speak, right?
She
does want to speak.
She does want to speak.
Does.
Oh, come on up.
I have to clear up this hoodie issue.
Okay. I would love for you to speak.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Oh my God.
So I originally had 22 minutes and then it was totally 2 minutes.
Right.
But anyways, I am Jenna Allen, Carpet Wanted, and I was honored to be able to sponsor this lunch. I see a lot of faces that I know and a lot of people that I do business with and a lot of faces that I don't know and that I don't do business with. So I hope you get to meet all of you. So I'm rapid. But we are a local flooring company that my granddad started nearly 60 years ago. We're down in the Donaldson area, but part of Mount Juliet has been here forever. So I just wanted to ask, keep us in mind if you have flooring needs. Okay, this is like, if you have any flooring needs or anything, just keep us in mind. We got some hard stuff on the table, but thank you again for letting me be a sponsor.
Just a couple of quick things. I know we got an important topic today. No more emissions testing after January 14th, 2022. So there's 8 hours of your day back. The census numbers are in, good numbers for Mount Juliet and Lebanon. I don't know the exact numbers, but we should be getting some rezoning and things of that sort. And if you missed on Friday, August the 6th, we had 12 ribbon cuttings all at one time for the Valley Center that was flooded. So thank you folks for that. I'm excited about introducing our speaker. I don't know why we have him here, because Facebook is telling me everything I need to know about COVID and all the different variants. And I have a PhD now in Delta. But our speaker today is Dr. Balin. He earned his degree in biology from the University of Iowa in 2008. He did his MD degree at the University of Iowa before heading to Vanderbilt, where his residency and fellowship in infectious diseases. He became his Master of Science in clinical investigation program through the Vanderbilt Medical School of Medicine in August 2020, and is actively engaged in translational research. He is currently an instructor in the Department of Medicine. His primary focus is understanding how the immune responses to persistent HIV may contribute to risk of metabolic diseases in persons living with HIV. In addition to his research interests, he actively takes care of people living with HIV and is a strong advocate for his care. Also with us is going to be Dr. Adam Huggins, who's the Associate Chief Medical Officer with Vanderbilt Wilson County Hospital. So I know there's a lot of questions and concerns, and so we're excited about having CD this mic.
No.
All right. Can everybody hear me? All right. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'm really happy to be talking to you today. I'm Sam Balin. I'm one of the instructors in the Division of Medicine. And there's a pretty rapidly moving environment with COVID. So I think it's really great that that there's interest in talking about COVID, because I'm always ready to talk about COVID with anyone. And so I think it's really important to just put in perspective where we are today. So this is kind of a global view of COVID-19, and you can see that the United States is in red. So we have one of the highest rates of transmissions in the world. To date, there's about 205.8 million cases reported in the world and 4.34 million deaths. These are dramatically undercounted for sure, but you can see that the new daily infections and daily deaths are increasing again after our winter peak. And so where are we today in the US? So this map, just even a month ago, looked like a lot of orange or a lot of yellow and a lot of green. And it has rapidly changed now so that most of the country is red and orange. So we have high level of transmission. And you can see that unfortunately, Tennessee is up in the top 10, sitting here at number 8. That was as of 8/16, so it might have changed since then. There's currently been 36.7 million cases reported in the US and over 620,000 deaths. And again, these are probably undercounted. The US leads the world in daily average number of new infections. So we account for about 1 in every 5 infections worldwide. So this is just a map of number of cases. It's not cases per 100,000, but just overall cases for the US. And you can see that the large peak there is the winter peak that we had. And we had thought maybe, with the vaccines and having passed the winter, maybe we were through the worst of it. And now we're seeing that there's a very large spike that's ongoing currently, and it's centered in the South. This is on the right is Tennessee, and you can see our trajectory looks very similar to kind of the overall US trajectory. We had very low number of cases in July, and has rapidly changed in the last few weeks. This is just some of the states that are reporting some of the highest cases. So Florida, you can see Florida is getting hit very hard right now. They are past what they achieved during their winter and previous summer peak in terms of hospitalization cases. Louisiana has also been hit pretty hard here, although it looks like maybe they're starting to plateau, and same with Arkansas. Hopefully that's good news. And Missouri, you can see, has been hit hard early in July and has been now plateauing. So maybe that portends a good thing for what's going to happen to Tennessee. But what's going on in Tennessee right now is pretty severe. So this is the graph of currently hospitalized patients. And you can see, really, we had a pretty low amount of hospitalized patients back in June and July. And then it's rapidly increased over the last few weeks. So we've had 954,000 cases reported total. Unfortunately, 12,986 deaths. And currently, as of 8/16, there were 2,327 patients in the hospital with COVID, and 675 in the ICU. So our hospital systems are highly burdened with this infection. I think this puts this into perspective of how bad our outbreak actually is. So this is each US state, but then also by country. And you can see that even when you include the entire world, the states like Louisiana, Mississippi have the highest rates of transmission in the world. And Tennessee, unfortunately, is down here. So we're not doing much better. And so if you just look at the world and compare countries and states, we have one of the worst outbreaks in the world right now. And so this has really been a dramatic change, which is why, I'm surprised that I'm here talking to you, but unfortunately, the Delta variant has really changed the game. This is our VUMC admission statistics from July 9th. So that was a little over a month ago. And really, we had very low numbers of patients in the hospitals. You can see 4 at the main hospital. And that was the lowest we'd been for a long time. This is actually outdated now, but on August 10th, you can see now instead of 4, we have 60 patients and they're spread out through our hospital. And we had also 12 patients in the intensive care unit we had 12 patients in the children's hospital, which doesn't seem like much, but for the children's hospital, that's actually quite a few patients. So we're seeing kids are getting hit hard by this Delta variant. And then of course, there are also large amounts of patients starting to accumulate in our other hospitals like Wilson County Hospital. And so kind of where we are today, this slide is actually a little outdated too, but we've had a 10-fold increase in hospitalized COVID positive patients at the main campus, 6-fold at Wilson County, and then 3-fold at the Children's Hospital. The important thing is that the majority of people who are hospitalized for COVID are not fully vaccinated. And so most people who are fully vaccinated are not getting admitted to the hospital. We do have a few that are vaccinated, but they're almost all entirely severely immunocompromised. So they are organ transplants, stem cell transplants, patients who can't develop an antibody response to the vaccine. In the last 7 days, the cases have doubled, and we really aren't seeing the current case counts that we're seeing across our systems haven't been seen since January, which was kind of when we were in that winter peak. And so why is this happening? Well, this is happening because of the Delta variant. So everybody kind of has heard of the Delta variant. So the Delta variant came out of India, and it essentially went from non-existent to dominant. So it went from essentially 0% to 95%. And that corresponds really well with our rapid rise in rates of COVID. And I think that speaks to the testament of the nature of the Delta variant. This is a much more aggressive variant than the original strain that we were dealing with. And it's much easier to transmit. And so the Delta variant, the original R0, so the R0 is how many people an infected person would be on average expected to infect. So the original strain that we experienced in Wuhan was about 2.5. So on average, 2.5 people would be infected per infection. The R0 for Delta, there's a wide confidence interval, but it's somewhere between 5 and 10, meaning that each infected person is expected to infect 5 to 10 people. There's a shorter incubation period from infection to symptoms, so it's 4 versus 5 days. And I think kind of going along with its increased infectiousness, infected people shed the virus at a much higher level. So there's greater 1,000-fold more virus in the upper airways with the Delta variant than there were with the original strain. Unvaccinated people are still at the greatest risk. So we are still seeing the majority of people in the hospital are, again, unvaccinated. But this also includes younger people. So this surge has been different in the past because we've done a really good job of vaccinating the older populations who are at high risk for having complications of COVID. But we're really seeing a lot of younger people now in our hospitals that are getting pretty sick from it. One of the things, the Delta variant is so infectious that it can cause hyper local outbreaks in areas that have low vaccine uptake. Unfortunately, in the South, our vaccine rates have lagged pretty significantly compared to some of the other parts of the country. And I think we're seeing some of the results from that. Breakthrough infections are more common. Breakthrough infections are uncommon in vaccinated people, but they are more common with the Delta variant than other variants. And even infected people can transmit the virus. And so this is, again, just a plot showing the Delta variant here. And again, wide confidence interval, kind of 5 to 10-ish, somewhere in there. But regardless, it's more contagious than smallpox, Ebola, seasonal flu, polio, and common cold. So it's a really infectious respiratory virus. Chickenpox is the one that's probably closest to, and chickenpox is extremely infectious. So we're really dealing with a variant that can spread very rapidly in our system, in our community. and particularly on the unvaccinated population. And so what do we know about the Delta variant? So we do know this is from the UK, that vaccines are very effective at preventing severe infections in Alpha. And so Alpha is the original variant, Delta variant is the new one. And so this is on the left side is looking at the Pfizer and AstraZeneca. That's not a vaccine that we have here in the US. But you see after one dose, you don't really get very good response. The vaccine effectiveness is not as good. But after 2 doses, you can see that the Pfizer and AstraZeneca provide pretty good response and effectiveness against the Delta variant for severe disease. And so I think that's a really important point, that these vaccines are still working very well in preventing severe disease hospitalization. And so where are we with the US vaccine? So this is from 8/16, so it might be a little outdated, but I think it's pretty incredible that we've vaccinated 168.7 million people fully vaccinated. So they've either gotten the Johnson & Johnson or they've gotten the 2 doses of the Moderna Pfizer. That's incredible amount of people, especially since 0 people are vaccinated as of early December, other than the clinical trial, people in the clinical trials. And so I think that's really great. And you can see that we've done a pretty good job in vaccinating populations greater than 65, so upwards of 80%. But you can see there's a lot of lag in the younger populations where less than or 61% are vaccinated. And in the South, that's even lower. So we're seeing rates lower than that as well. And that's contributing to the spread of this Delta variant. So I think, one of the things early on is, there's a lot of focus on the vaccines preventing symptomatic infection. So basically that the vaccines would prevent any sort of infection related to COVID. But I think what's lost in that is that really what we're trying to do is prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And so nearly all the COVID-19 deaths now are in the US are people who are not vaccinated. So it's about the breakthrough infections of fully vaccinated people account for probably about 0.1%. So it's a very small percent of it. So basically the conclusion from this slide is that vaccines are, even though there are potentially more breakthrough infections, it is doing what it's supposed to do, which is to prevent severe infections and hospitalizations. And again, while older population and comorbidities, people with comorbidities are more likely to get hospitalized, we are seeing younger people without comorbidities get hospitalized with COVID-19. And so it's a really important tool to really prevent hospitalizations, death, and also potentially change the transmission pattern of this virus. So there's a study that the CDC released looking at the Providencetown Cape Cod outbreak among vaccinated versus unvaccinated people. And so this is on a chart showing the viral levels in the based on reverse transcriptase of unvaccinated versus fully vaccinated. And I think you can see that they overlap pretty significantly. So there was a lot of concern with the Delta variant that fully vaccinated people can actually carry the virus at the same levels as unvaccinated people, and therefore could potentially transmit it. And it seems like they were transmitting the virus. And so most of these breakthrough infections, however, in the vaccinated were very mild, minimal to mild. There's such a large population of vaccinated people, it was in the high 90s in this particular group, that more of the cases were in the vaccinated group. And the vaccines did exactly what they're supposed to do again, which is prevent severe infection and hospitalization or death. And so I think, again, just reemphasizing that, yes, it seems like they can carry virus at the same level as unvaccinated people, but that they don't end up with severe infections or death. And overwhelmingly, again, this is just showing again that the overwhelming number of cases are driven by people not fully vaccinated. So what about protection from natural infection? So it turns out if you've had natural infection, your antibodies wane after a while and you don't develop as good of an antibody response as when you have the vaccine. And so if you had 1 dose or just a natural infection, you weren't as protected as if you got 2 doses of the vaccine. The vaccine is only specific for the spike protein. So when you get a natural infection, you're seeing the whole virus, but when you get a vaccine, you're only seeing the spike protein. And because of that, the spike protein, that binding protein, is the most important part of the coronavirus, because that's what allows it to enter the cells and cause infection. And so the vaccine, you get a more of a flavor, you get more broad antibodies that can neutralize it and prevent it from infecting the cells. And so I'll show you data later on that even if you've had COVID before and you think you're immune, you're actually over 2 times as likely to get COVID again as if you got vaccinated after COVID infection. So this is a busy slide, but what I want to just kind of take it one at a time. So these are the natural infection here are people who had gotten naturally infected, and these are their antibody responses. And so you can see they're plotted there are the different strains of the variant. And the one I want you to focus on is the brown one, the brown dots, because that's the Delta variant. And so you can see that for people who were infected with the original strain, they had very low levels of antibodies that were able to neutralize the Delta variant. So that dotted line is sort of the level we would think that antibodies could neutralize and prevent infection. So they did not achieve that. So potentially they're potentially exposed to getting COVID again from the Delta variant. And the same thing is true when you look at the Pfizer and AstraZeneca directly below that. You can see that after one dose, there's not enough antibodies to develop to essentially protect you from the Delta variant. However, when you go to the right column, you can see in the natural infection, when people who have had COVID infection before were given vaccines, you can see their antibody levels to the Delta variant, those brown dots, were well above the cutoff we think you need to get protection from it. And then if you go down again to the Pfizer vaccine after 2 doses, you can see that again, those brown dots are above that dotted line, and same with the AstraZeneca. So I think the takeaway from this is that you really need to have 2 doses of the vaccine. And even if you've had COVID before, we still recommend getting the vaccine because again, the antibodies that you produce are not as good, they're not as robust. And so you would still be exposed to Delta variants. And that's why vaccines are really important regardless of whether you had infection before. And some of the clinical data that comes from this is from Kentucky, where they found that people who had previously been infected with COVID, but not vaccinated were at about 2.3-fold higher risk of getting COVID than those who were vaccinated and had previously had COVID. And so again, this is just emphasizing the effectiveness of the vaccines. So when someone is fully vaccinated, they have an 8-fold reduction in the incidence of disease, they have a 25-fold reduction in hospitalization incidence, and they have a 25-fold reduction in the incidence of death. So these vaccines, despite again that the fact that there's more breakthrough infections with the Delta variant, they're still overwhelmingly effective at preventing hospitalization and death. So this again is kind of going back to the fact that you're still, even though people can carry the virus, if they're vaccinated and unvaccinated, they still have the same level of virus that was detected. There's still 8-fold decrease in the incidence of disease. And a big difference here is that when you compare the vaccinated and unvaccinated and their viral loads, you can see they start off at the same level, but then as time progresses in days from when they got infected, the vaccinated breakthrough group drops off quicker, meaning that they're less infectious than the unvaccinated people. So I think that can have a really important impact on how COVID-19 transmits, because if you can shorten the duration of how long someone's infectious, you can prevent more infections. And so I just want to emphasize that in addition to just being less likely to have infection in the first place, if people do get infected when they're vaccinated, they're less infectious for a shorter duration of time. And that can be really important and change how this moves through the system. And so are there, one of the questions are there FDA approvals for the vaccines? And the answer is yes. So the FDA granted emergency use authorization for 3 vaccines in the US, the Johnson & Johnson, the Pfizer, and the Moderna. And the Pfizer has actually submitted its paperwork for submitting for full approval authorization. And so that is likely to be granted by the FDA soon in the next few weeks. So we're expecting that the FDA will grant that. And there's a lot of things that go into getting full approval. It's not just about safety. It's also about inspecting the facilities to make sure they can make it reproducible and they're clean. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but there's the anticipation that this will get approval for full use. So just some things on vaccine safety. So COVID vaccines are probably the most studied vaccine out there. They're highly safe and effective. We have, in addition to having large clinical trials that have shown thousands of people, in it and did not show really any safety signals, we've now vaccinated 168 million people, and globally vaccinated even more people. And so we're getting a lot of clinical data that these are safe and effective. Vaccines, there's really good evidence vaccines do not cause infertility. So there's some concern about infertility, but those are false. Vaccines do not cause infertility. They appear safe in pregnancy, and ACOG, one of the OB-GYN organizations, actually recommends it in pregnant women because COVID-19 can be very severe. And it's also recommended in breastfeeding because we know that the antibodies generated to the vaccine do pass through the breast milk. The risk of immediate anaphylaxis from mRNA vaccine is exceedingly low. So it's 2 to 5 events per million doses. The risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, that's from the Pfizer vaccine is about 24 events per million doses. And it's mostly in males 18 to 29 years of age. And again, most of those are very mild, and some patients didn't even know that they had pericarditis. We also found that the J&J vaccine, there's a very rare incidence, 9 events per million in women, generally in women aged 18 to 49 for blood clots and low platelets. And then the risk of Guillain-Barré from the J&J is 8 events per million. But again, these are extremely small numbers. So the risk of these events is extremely small, and most of them are pretty mild. Long-term side effects are highly unlikely. Again, most vaccine studies we follow for days, weeks, and now even in months, to almost a year now, and have not seen any long-term side effects. And we know that COVID-19 is much more likely to cause long-term side effects. One thing that we've been also hearing about is the vaccine adverse events reporting system. This is VAERS. Some people have said that there are reported, I think, 12,000 deaths from vaccines, and this simply isn't true. So VAERS is a system that's been in place. It's not new, and it allows any clinician to essentially report an event that they think could be associated with the vaccine. And so when they say there's 12,366 deaths, that doesn't mean that 12,366 people died from the vaccine. What that means is that some clinician reported in the system that someone got a COVID vaccine and then subsequently died an unknown period of time afterwards. And it's almost certain that almost all of these are not actually true, aside from maybe 3 possible deaths linked to J&J vaccine related to the blood clotting issue. And so I think it's just really important to understand that this is a system that's been in place for a long time. It's a system to pick up on rare side effects that we otherwise might not detect. And so that's where the rare events like the myocarditis and pericarditis came from. But again, these are not deaths proven from the vaccine. They're exceedingly rare. And just sort of where we're heading about boosters. So Israel has already approved a 3rd dose for their COVID-19 for the elderly. And the CDC currently is recommending, it's not technically a booster, it's part of their primary shot for moderately to severely immunocompromised patients. In addition, and so that includes people who are organ transplants or are on immunosuppression. There's no FDA or CDC approval for a booster for other people who aren't immunocompromised at this point. And so what about children? So right now, the Pfizer vaccine is available in children ages 12 to 17. And they're currently there's currently trials going for Pfizer and Moderna on children 6 months to 11 years. It's been delayed a little bit because the FDA, as a precaution, wants to expand the number of patients in the trial to look for any rare side effects with heart inflammation. But we are seeing that children are being hit very hard with this Delta variant. So Arkansas hospitals are reporting record number of children. And it's worse than just the flu. So this is a really bad disease. Most children don't have issues, but we are seeing a lot of children who are getting sick and ending up in the hospital. So where are we heading? We are not out of the woods yet. Tennessee is rapidly changing with regards to its COVID-19 transmission. So this is just for VMC, but VMC has been requiring now vaccines. And the reason that VMC is requiring vaccines is because we have really high-risk patients, and we also have some coworkers who are immunocompromised that really aren't going to be protected from this vaccine. And we know that if this virus is transmitted to our patients or coworkers with immunocompromise, they're at much higher risk of getting severe infection and dying from it. So we really feel like an obligation to protect our patients. And the other issue with the Delta variant is you can be infected and not really feel sick. And so that's another reason why the VMC has recommended or has mandated vaccines, and they're very effective. And just like other vaccines, like the flu shot, VMC wants to protect the other healthcare workers and wants to protect patients. And so these are all of the different organizations that are calling for vaccine mandates, again, just to protect against COVID-19. And these are the institutions that are mandating it. And we expect to see, as the Pfizer gets full approval, that this will probably increase. This will most likely increase as well. And so the other issue then to bring up is this indoor masking policy and recommendation. So the CDC kind of reversed its guidelines. And the reason it did that is because, again, that study that showed that people who are vaccinated can carry the virus at a similar level as those who are unvaccinated and can also transmit the infection. And so These are areas in red where there's high amount of COVID transmission, which you can see it's almost the entire country. And so that's why mask guidelines have changed, is because this Delta variant really is a different beast. It's much more infectious, it's easier to transmit, and it seems like it can transmit in vaccinated people. So that's why VMC is recommending masks in all clinical areas, and then on non-clinical spaces, again, in open spaces, it's recommended, but in obviously, if you're at your workspace or anything, then you're not required to wear a mask. So, what do we need to do to combat this Delta variant? Well, I think it's a combination of things to really change the trajectory of the current outbreak. It's going back to the same things we've been doing, which is social distancing, wearing masks, improving ventilation, and hygiene. But really to get us out of the cycle of variants causing, recurrent episodes of hospitalizations, we really just need to get people immunized. These vaccines are really safe and effective, and one of the most studied vaccines in the world. So I think that's kind of my summary. I'm happy to take questions, but yeah, thank you for inviting me to come talk to you today.
Anyone have any questions? You worship the first one. She asked if it was a question.
That's right.
Hey, my question, I've heard through Facebook, so I'm sure it's accurate information, that this is not the type of virus that's going to go away. Is that true? Is it here forever? And if it keeps mutating, I mean, long term, do you see us ever not wearing masks and not social distancing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think, if anything if COVID has taught us anything, it's that, we have to be careful about our predictions because it's extremely hard to predict, right? I mean, you've got a rapidly evolving infection and you've got human behavior, and it's just incredibly difficult to predict. But it does seem like COVID is probably going to stay around. We probably aren't going to eradicate it, and it probably will become more like some of the coronaviruses that we see already in our population. I can't predict what that's going to look like, but the variants. The problem is that it spreads so far, so it's infected billions. I mean, at this point, probably hundreds of millions to billions of people. When you have that many infections, each individual, you can produce a new variant that can, then spread to other people. And that's exactly what happened with the Alpha and then the Beta and the Delta now. So I think we're probably going to see new variants come up with this. Thus far, we've been really fortunate that the vaccines have been super effective against all of them. And so I think, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do expect there are going to be new variants at some point. But right now, the Delta is the big variant.
Okay. You hear me? Oh, I don't know. What are the exceptions? What are the?
She's asking, what are the exceptions when it comes to a vaccine?
You mean for like who should not get the vaccine?
Yes.
So there are actually very few. It's actually the only one that I'm really familiar with is if you have a known history of anaphylaxis to one of the ingredients to the vaccine, then you should not get the vaccine. But other than that, there really aren't any reasons why you couldn't get the vaccine. Again, I know there's stuff on Facebook about fertility issues and pregnancy. We have a lot of clinical data that shows that that's not true. So we vaccinated hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of women who are either trying to get pregnant or were pregnant. And we've seen that that's not caused any issues. And so pregnancy, infertility, breastfeeding, not an issue with this vaccine. It's very safe. There's a question about how long you have to wait if you get COVID. How long would you have to wait before you get the vaccine? The answer is there's not really a good guideline for how long to wait. It essentially be kind of when you feel better. You can basically get the vaccine when you feel better. So From my standpoint, the vaccine is very safe and effective, and there's really very few reasons why anyone should not get the vaccine.
Yeah, and Dr. Balin, I'll add, I am an OBGYN at Vanderbilt, and we do routinely give that vaccine in pregnancy and to women of childbearing age. It is very, very safe. It's recommended by all the major women's health groups across the country and across the world. And we have unfortunately seen some pregnant women become incredibly sick who were not vaccinated, both here in Wilson County and downtown, that have required ICU care and other extreme forms of care. So we, again, do strongly recommend it in women, whether they are pregnant or of childbearing age. It does not affect fertility in any way.
Thanks, Adam.
Now's the time. I don't want to see it on Facebook later. Well, we do want to thank Dr. Balin and Dr. Huggins for being on the call today. And due to that, we'll make a donation to Wilson County, in the name of Wilson County Books of Birth, for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library in y'all's name. So thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
All right. Thanks to Tracy Pope for setting this up with Vanderbilt. She's a great chamber member and a great advocate and sponsor. And thanks to Marla for getting this all ready, even though the mics don't like to work when she's here, but they work when she does it ahead of time. So make sure you say thank you to the staff here and the lunch that they provide. They do a great job, and they're very gracious to let us be here today. Any other questions or comments or concerns? Sounds like we're going to get out at the right time. Just want to add at the end of this that this is so, as we all know, it's decisive, and I think political, whichever, just make sure that we're not pushing our agenda to other folks and shoving our beliefs and making enemies out of. But just be respectful. Someone wants to wear a mask, let them wear a mask. They choose not to, and just let's try not to. Let's just love on each other. And there's businesses that have decided to do whatever. Just we have a better way of doing things here in Mount Juliet and Wilson County, and take care of the people that are coming to work. You see these folks that, Sonic gets destroyed every week about how their staffing is, and think about the folks that are there, that the only 2 or 3 people that are working. The owner actually runs the grill every so often. So just use patience and love with the folks around here. And same way with the vaccinations, encourage people to get vaccinated. And so hopefully this can go away. But there again, it's not a religious thing. It's not a Democratic thing. It's not a Republican thing. It's, choose what you want to do, but let's not force it on others people and make people uncomfortable, if that's what I'm rambling. So anyways, get out there and enjoy that rain. Thank you guys for being on here today with all the great information.
Thank you.